Avoiding the next Opal or Mascot Towers. Let's have a look. Good afternoon, everyone. Florian Heiser here. Hope you've had a good day. I'm enjoying a lunchtime break with my Stein here, and I thought we'd look at this article from the ABC. It's to do with advice and suggestions for people who want to, well, avoid buying a lemon, buying the next Opal Towers, buying into the next Mascot Towers, and the list just keeps getting longer. I've had people ask me to do videos on this, and I was thinking about doing, a top 5 list of things to look out for. And I thought, let's have a read through this first to judge it, really, to judge it. Okay. If you buy a used car, you get a service history. Well, yeah, that's a very good point. When you buy an apartment, do you get a copy of the building manual? Sure, in the past it would have cost a fortune, but do you now with PDF, would you even read it? If you buy a fridge or flat screen TV, you get a warranty. But what about buying an apartment? You get a nightmare, it seems. In the past 8 months, at least 3 apartment buildings in Sydney have been evacuated because of defects, prompting questions about the consumer protections available for buyers of high-rise units. In December, Opal Tower at Olympic Park was evacuated after cracks appeared in some walls, while last month residents were ordered out of Mascot Towers for the same reason. Today, it was revealed another building in Zetland had sat empty since last year after extensive water damage made it non-compliant under New South Wales fire codes. Now, a lot of people are discussing these issues, and a lot of politicians, a lot of people, professionals are putting forward their solutions. One thing that I'll draw everyone's attention to again is just the Shergold Weir report, and I have a playlist reading through the whole report if you want to listen to it as a podcast, and I'll just link to it there. Have a look at it, because that report has a lot of good suggestions, because there are problems endemic in our construction industry in Australia, and it's not just in New South Wales, but I suspect it's because New South Wales, and Sydney in particular, overheated so much with all of the multi-unit residential development that happened there. I did a video recently where we looked at just the foreign investment into Australian property, and I referenced an article from the CEO of freelancer.com.au where he mentioned that a quarter of GDP growth in 2016 could be found in one corridor near Sydney, and that for the entire country. Just shows you the scale of work that was happening there and just how much it was getting pushed out. So I say a lot of that is overheating, is the way we procure buildings, privatization of certification, the traditional police not being able to police things in these industries. And yeah, I don't think it's going to be as easy to solve as people realize or as politicians hope. So, according to Owners Corporation Network, OCN, Executive Officer Karen Stiles, a lack of regulation has created a dog-eat-dog scenario. You need to research the developer and build it yourself, she said. Find out their previous projects and go to the site itself and speak to the residents. That is fantastic advice. That is fantastic advice. Because even if it isn't the developer's fault, and something's gone wrong in a previous building, maybe they hired the same builder, or maybe, they worked with the same subbies, or maybe their procurement method was the same from one building to another. I'd even suggest going further, looking at the people who worked on the projects. Because if the bad apples go from one practice to another, you can track them. It's hard. It's very hard to do. Get yourself a friend who's got LinkedIn with a professional add-on or something. I think that can work. So, Chamber Russell Lawyers, partner and residential construction dispute expert Paul Judanska, said his best advice was to find a reputable builder. But as we've seen in Sydney, that has been hard to determine these days. He said the potential buyer also had the responsibility to carry out their own due diligence, such as engaging a conveyancing solicitor and looking at the strata report. Well, yes, no matter... When you get a conveyancing solicitor, guys, get the material yourself too and go through it with a fine-tooth comb yourself. Not just trusting them to read all the documents. Read it yourself. Read it yourself, because this is a huge investment for a lot of people. particularly if it's going to be your home. The problem is the property market has been so hot that people have been thinking they're going to miss out. Well, yeah, it's the fear of missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a psychological problem that is used. I just watched a video by The Quartering talking about how in mobile games, how they use that to manipulate people. It's quite interesting. But the only thing they're missing out on is buying a lemon. Yes. Yeah. Take your time. 3 buildings, 3 evacuations. Residents from 30 apartments in a studio-style complex in Zetland were evacuated 8 months ago after extensive and severe water damage made the building non-compliant under state fire codes. And the fact that it hasn't been rectified. So something's going on there. There's obviously a legal wrangle going on there. But, if you were living there, that would kind of suck, wouldn't it? Regardless of who's at fault or what's happening. So, the City of Sydney said it spoke to the building's owners in February who would engage consultants to address the issues and make the building habitable again. It comes as residents of the nearby Mascot Towers were evacuated from the 132 apartment complex last month after cracks appeared in the building. Owners of apartments in that development have been left with multi-million-dollar repair bill, as the building, which was constructed more than 10 years ago, is too old to fall under warranty. There you go. Meanwhile, more than 6 months after the Opal Tower fiasco at Olympic Park was evacuated, about a third of the apartments are still deemed uninhabitable. It boggles the mind. It boggles the mind, but I think we're just seeing what's happening from all this, the overheating of the sector, changes to legislation, and just procurement methods. There's so much to it. If you want to watch my videos on this, guys, if this is the first one of mine you're discovering, go and have a look. I've done a lot on them. One that you might find interesting, if you're not familiar, is looking at the question that I pose if design and construct was an issue in here, and just that way of procuring these buildings. The 3 incidents have highlighted what industry experts have labelled a gaping hole in regulation and protections, with some residents suggesting there were more protections for someone buying a toaster. For prospective buyers, industry experts suggest the following advice. Look for a sinking fund forecast in the strata report, plus any planned or completed remedial works. Okay, that's good. You want to look for where the sinking fund is going, what it is going to be spent on. Go through the reports in detail. For existing apartment complexes, conduct a body corporate record search. Yes, you should, but the records at some of these strata organizations are terrible as well. They're not necessarily the best at record keeping, so you've got to be vigilant. The search should outline recent annual meetings and information on the sinking fund and any planned and completed capital works projects. Yeah, I'd want a year's worth of meeting minutes. I'd want the meeting minutes. Find the builder's previous projects and go and inspect them in person. That's fantastic advice. That is really good advice. Go and inspect. Go there, with your phone, have a look, and see what's happening. Just walk up, and say, oh yeah, I'm just having a look. We're looking at buying another building that this builder's done. Have a yarn to some of the people in the building, because if they're pissed off, they will tell you. Guaranteed, they will tell you. Don't buy an apartment in a complex more than 3 floors high. Now that's interesting. That's interesting because, well, once you get over 3 floors, you've got different infrastructure, you've got lifts, you've got other costs, you've got more complicated engineering, even the licensing of builders. Here in Queensland, the licensing staggers at different heights of buildings. The complexity of a 3-story building is very different to a multi-story tower. But then again, the lofts here, they're 3 stories. 1, 2, 3, or 3.5, but you know what I mean. Similar. Oh, they'd be borderline. They're not typical 3-story. It's not like a walk-up. That's what I'm assuming he's referring there. Have an independent building inspection completed. Well, yes, building pest, that should be done regardless. It may be a bit different in New South Wales. New South Wales is a lot funnier than Queensland. And this is where I'm seeing with Queensland, with just the processes that you have to go through. You don't need to hire a conveyancer. You can do it yourself. But, there's still all these other processes and hoops you need to jump through. What would I add to this? I'd say if you find any issues in the inspection, make sure that you're allowed to pull in other experts. Spend $500 to get get a piece of concrete x-rayed to look for something. $500. Put that onto the seller if you've got concerns. We'll split the cost for this. Or, I'll pay to get a plumber to check these issues. Oh, there's water leaking here. I want to find out where that's happening. Where's the plumbing inspection that you've done? Where's the camera tracking that you've hired to identify this leak? How's it going to be rectified? So Ms. Stiles said the OCN also suggested buying an apartment more than 10 years old. Generally, we find faults have emerged and been fixed within the first 10 years, she said. But Mascot Towers and the most recent one in Zetland were more than 10 years old, so that doesn't always ring true. Yeah, I think that's a bit outdated, maybe 20 years old. Maybe buy something from the last century. She said New South Wales needed to resource a building commissioner with statutory authority. The New South Wales government has flagged a number of proposed reforms last month, including the introduction of a building commissioner. However, they've yet to be introduced, and any benefit they will have will be for future generations. It won't happen overnight. It's not going to fix any of these problems. And the problem is a lot of apartment buildings are going to be, I think, dented. What else would I ask for? I would want to find out how the building was procured. How it was, and by procured I mean, what was the process and contract that was used to build the building? Was it a traditional procurement, or was it a design and construct procurement? What were the relationships between the developer, between the builder, between the strata management company? And that, I would suggest, may not even be possible to find. I don't know, if it was built by a traditional procurement, are you going to have the same potential for issues? Maybe still, but there's less chance, hopefully less chance of compromise of the original design intent, and be that from an architectural perspective, be that from a structural perspective, be that from another perspective. But it can all get thrown out the window anyway if the developer is too close to the builder and you don't know what can happen. So, there's definitely some good advice here. This is some really good advice. And I would honestly look at old stock. I'd look at 3-story, double brick, nice, boring old school construction, because push comes to shove, you can get a smaller builder to do some rectification or repair work. Sure, it can still cost a fortune, but it's not going to be to the level of rectifying a huge building like this and everyone having to chip in. Guys, let me know what you think. What advice or suggestions do you have to people that would be going on shopping for these things? Stay clear in general. It's a bit concerning, isn't it? Because the thing is you need to, people want to buy homes. Maybe just wait a little bit. Buy an investment property rural and rent it out to offset your rental costs in city. I don't know. But yeah, those would be my suggestions. We'll try and find out how the building was procured, number one. These are pretty good. Look at some older stock, maybe more than 10 years old, maybe 17 years old. And also another one would be to see what copy or what version of the National Construction Code it was certified to. And that should either be on the certificate of classification or the certificate of occupancy, depending on which state you're sitting in. It should tell you which year of the building code it was certified to. And, that will hopefully guide you in what type of construction and technology was used in the building, where you've got newer versions of the code having, more onerous requirements with regards to slip rating, which is good, but also having more onerous requirements with environmental and energy efficiencies, which sounds good, but could cause people to bring in non-compliant materials, styrofoam, to stick on the buildings to get better energy values and thermal insulation, but has now created situations where we have potential fire hazards on buildings. There's another one. You want to get also, another one is try and get the building manual if you can, get the original drawings of the building if you can, and get a copy of the material schedule. You want to know what materials were at least specified, if not what's put in. You want the as-built drawings, because on the as-built drawings, they should mark up whenever they've made a change. So you want, and for this, I want to identify potential, claddings that may be at risk or may propose an issue, just so you can also see if there have been a whole lot of changes. If there have been, the as-built drawings have had significant changes as well, that could be another warning sign that something's happened. I mean, honestly, on all these projects, there are going to be changes as construction, because just the difficulties in designing a one-off piece, which is a building, and building it on site with all the latent conditions that you discover while going through this process. But it would just be good to keep an eye on, to at least find that information. Some of these things are going to be impossible to get, or really hard to get. Places to look for on site, old storerooms, maybe, up in the roof, if they've got a lift motor room, maybe there's some drawings in there. Places where the managers of the building would have it. Some of the newer buildings, they should have all the plans available to you, all on drawers, and you can go there with your phone, photograph it. So that would be what I would suggest, just to get a pile of information, then hire a friendly builder, even an architect or someone to go through it and have a look at it and talk about it, to check. So, yeah, those are my suggestions, guys. Thank you for joining me for this lunchtime video, and I'll see you all again later today. Take care.